What are your impressions so far here at the CND?
Oh, I'm loving the CND. It's been busy, it's been great to hear, and I think this is the year to be here. This is the year to hear the changes, certainly around American policy. We're seeing a lot of shift compared to last year and previous years.
It's quite different than last year, right?
It's quite different from last year, especially because what made last year so notable was actually coming to a vote on a resolution that included harm reduction that the United States was leading and actually voted in favor of. So it was historic in so many ways, and the United States was on the right side. And now, 1 year later, the United States is looking to tear everything down.
We Hungarians know how to be at the wrong side of history. How does it make you feel as an American now?
It makes me feel ashamed to see that a country that can do so much good in the world is actively seeking to do so much harm. And it makes me really sad because it doesn't need to be this way.
The world is in a state of turmoil. The decisions of the Trump administration to cut funding affected many international organizations, local organizations working in the field of harm reduction, HIV, drug policy reform. How do you see that impact?
It's devastating because, of course, USAID and PEPFAR funded harm reduction and HIV programs all over the world. Was the largest funder of the HIV response. And we know that many people, already fell off their HIV treatment. HIV prevention is going to be deprioritized. I mean, there's going to be a very serious impact on health and mortality and also on the HIV epidemic. And then at another level, of course, UN entities like UNAIDS have completely been defunded now by the US government. UNAIDS was 50% dependent on US government funds.
I would like to quote from our Deputy High Commissioner. She said at the Human Rights Council last week, cutting funding at this fragile moment is tantamount to cutting off the future of so many people around the world.
INPUD launched a special survey to really understand what is an effect of these US funding cuts. And these first findings are really shocking. So we received 76 responses from all over the world. More than 60% of these organizations are community-led networks of people who use drugs. For 25% of our respondents, US funding, it was from 76 till 100% of their budget. So let's say it was the only available funding in their budget. Largest disrupted are HIV testing, program for women who use drugs, legal and human rights support, and HIV treatment. Number one of services which were disrupted and affected and disrupted was outreach and peer work. And we understand that outreach and peer work, it's the founding element of any further harm reduction work and other elements. So if you cut this, in fact, you closing the entire model.
Julia, how do you see the impact of the new US administration's cutting of funding in South Africa?
A lot of our public healthcare clinics are funded directly by USAID, and then we also obviously have CDC and PEPFAR funded clinics, and they provide a significant amount of sexual reproductive healthcare services. And one of the big challenges we have in remote and rural areas is that if those facilities are closed or if those facilities cease to exist going forward without the funding, there is no alternative for those women in rural areas. It's too expensive for them to travel into cities, and they don't have the transport, they don't have the funding. So it's going to, perhaps not immediately, but we are going to be seeing a significant challenge. We're going to be seeing big problems. We're going to be seeing healthcare decline, a lot of mother-to-child transmission of HIV.
In Ukraine, plenty of health infrastructure, democracy, free media, different national processes depends on USAID funding. For Central Asia, it's more about the health, HIV response, HIV testing, treatment. But in general, important component which we are all time forgetting, it's the narrative change. It's like all the right-wing and fascists and populists, they are now kind of allowed to say freely, without any boundaries, without any thinking about feelings of other people, to say freely, okay, we could be rude to transgender, we could be rude to LGBT, we could be rude to anyone, and we could use this populistic language, anti-homophobic, anti-drug language to gain the voters, to gain support. And they immediately started doing this. It seems like the imaginable adult in the room, it disappeared.
A sad example of this is our own country, Hungary. In March 2025, the far-right government of Viktor Orbán banned the annual Pride March, claiming it posed a threat to children's well-being. Orbán argued that Hungary had previously been under pressure from the West not to take such action, but now that the winds have changed, it was time to act. Orbán's government also launched a new war on drugs, preparing for a major crackdown on civil society and free speech. They introduced a constitutional amendment banning not only the use and distribution of illicit drugs, but also the so-called promotion of them. This Russian-style ban on drug promotion could lead to the repression of harm reduction and drug policy reform efforts, including Drugreporter itself.
It's a kind of moment of truth that, that we always knew how important role the US plays, but now when they cut their support, it seems that it was even bigger role than we thought, right?
Yeah, I think everyone is reeling from that. And also this over-dependency on one government and one country for so much of the funding, whether it's for our advocacy work or for the global health response and the humanitarian response in general, was not sustainable, I think, and something had to change. But the way that it has happened so fast has made it impossible to kind of fill, the immediate gaps. And we also cannot only lay the blame at the United States' feet, right? Because this is a trend that we've seen in development aid for, many, many years now, with many donor governments stepping back. We've seen this from the UK. The Netherlands also cut their overseas development assistance in half. The UK recently announced the same, to spend more on military spending. We also see reductions from the Germans, from the Scandi governments. I mean, this has been going on for a long time, but none as swift and ferocious, as I mentioned, as the US.
If care is not taken, this could actually make us lose a lot of the successes we have gained in addressing issues of HIV/AIDS in the continent. But I am hopeful that maybe governments within the region will begin to look at how they can plug in to be able to address some of these challenges in terms of funding to address the health sector most importantly, because the health of the citizens is very, very key.
So you think this crisis can be an opportunity to address issues like corruption in Africa?
I believe so, because I think this issue is really a wake-up call on many African countries. Because if you look at the challenges in Africa, a lot of the resources that goes down the drain is as a result of corruption. And corruption is one of the things we need to really deal with head-on strongly. Because if we fight corruption in Africa, I believe Africa would even need AIDS to be able to function effectively.
Majority of European countries still have civil society around. And in some moment, there will be discussion. If we need more security budget, we need to protect our countries from the Russian aggression. If we need to have more prepared countries to protect, then we need to understand the efficiency of the action. And criminalization of any community, and specifically people who use drugs, and criminalizing of drug use and possession, it's very expensive exercise. It's such expensive that maybe, just maybe, country couldn't afford this huge investment in criminalization, giving no efficiency, and maybe, okay, some of it need to go to the harm reduction, prevention, treatment, care, but mainly to the health, and majority of it will be left in the budget.
We, as a people who use drugs, all our life is, life of challenges, life of struggles, life of fears, life of being judged, being blamed, being under some pressure, being on the ground. It's not something new for us. I believe that as much pressure is happening on us from outside, from external, as much stronger it makes us. And maybe it's a time, we open in the era of more aggressive advocacy, more organized and more scaled up partnerships and movements.
How do you feel about the war Trump declared on drug cartels?
If only the war were to be accompanied by a reasonable strategy, it could make sense. For instance, if any U.S. administration really wanted to put the drug cartels out of business, they should approach the idea of legal regulation of our very lucrative market. That's not what Trump seems to have in mind. Trump seems to have in mind a very punitive and, I would say, even militarized response that's focused, strangely enough, outside U.S. borders without due consideration of the massive drug markets within the United States and how to wrestle with them. It's also strange because, Trump's bellicosity comes precisely at moments when, the most significant U.S. problem, overdose deaths, has been starting to decline. So there are opportunities to understand why that is, rather than just redouble punitive efforts that have gotten us into such a bad place to begin with.
La gran genetista Madre Tierra, en su infinita sabiduría, ha entregado a los pueblos andino-amazónicos la sagrada hoja de coca como un bien natural, de gran valor social, comunicacional, cultural, medicinal, alimenticio y como un gran aliado para la sobrevivencia de los pueblos que habitan en condiciones extremas.
There are always issues that can be improved in conventions, they need to evolve with time. One of the issues that needs to be modified pretty soon is the classification of the coca leaf. Currently, the coca leaf is listed under Schedule 1 of the Convention on Narcotic Drugs, and we think it should be removed completely.
What about the review process of Coca?
Yes, that is also ongoing. The United States has made severe funding cuts to the WHO, and initially we were worried that this would affect the Coca review process because the Expert Committee on Drug Dependence will do the critical review of Coca. They've already started throughout this year and it will culminate in their meeting in October. But I have heard that the funding for that process is unaffected by the funding cuts from the USA, which is positive. And we're hoping that the WHO, of course, will recommend descheduling, as in removing the coca leaf from the 1961 convention.
Would it make it possible for member states to make it legal as a legal product?
Yeah, for sure, yeah. And I mean, it would make it possible for the member states that have coca production to create legal markets for coca leaf, and especially for export of coca leaf products like drinks or energy bars or sweets, etc.
El tiempo ha llegado de la liberación de la sagrada hoja de coca y con ella la liberación de la historia del vivir bien de los pueblos originarios. Hayaya la sagrada hoja de coca. Muchas gracias.